All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our third meeting today. I think like last meeting was sunny Santa Monica, so we may have been in a bit of a rush. If you're here from the club fair, this is the Game Development Club. And today we're going to be talking about game pitches and our project management. So the game pitches are our semester-long projects for those of you who weren't here in the first meeting. Basically, you have a semester to create a game of your choosing. And if you have an idea for a game that you want to lead this semester, the ideas are due on February 17th. That's this Friday at 11:59 p.m. And then you'll be doing a presentation on your game on Tuesday, February 21st. If you're leading a game, you're going to have to meet with some of the board, and then we're going to help you scope your game and then see the direction that you want to take it. And then if you're interested in joining a game, we'll have more information on how you join one of the games during next week's meeting. And then this Friday, we have a Unity workshop. It will be online through Discord on 4 p.m. Please download Unity and VS Code before the workshop. I'll send out the links in the meeting general channel of our Discord server. And then I'll also be sending a package sometime before the workshop, and then we'll be going through that package. Links will be sent on how to download these.
All right, so if you're graduating this semester and you'd like a stole, please fill out this form by March 24th. If you are a paid member, you'll get yours for free, but even if you're a paid member, you still have to fill out the form so we know who's interested. Otherwise, if you're not a paid member, the stole will be $25, so please fill that out if you're interested. Also, last semester we conducted pre-orders for bucket hats. If you ordered one but you still haven't paid yet, please contact Lawrence in terms of payment. If we aren't able to get the payments by the end of this week, then we won't be able to place the orders, so we will then cancel the orders and refund everyone's payments. Lastly, if you're interested, you can become a VIP member. For this semester, it's $15. Some of the benefits you get are having a free shirt. We have some right there. Priority or discount for club trips such as studio tours and socials. A stole, if you're graduating, it would be free, and you'd also be eligible to run for the board for next year.
So he fixes that, like, who's new to the club and who's been coming? Just a few people. I see long hair is also in style again, which is nice. It's going out of style when I was president.
Are you guys able to hear us now? Let me see. All right, cool.
Are you good? Okay, cool. All right, yeah, so I'm a senior technical UI designer. I work on Call of Duty. I was the president of the Game Dev Club from 2016 to 2017. I like RPGs, strategy games, and action-adventure games. Favorite games are like Uncharted. I grew up on Age of Empires. Yeah, if anybody has any questions for me after this talk, I'm going to hang around. I don't know if there's another class after this or not, but I'll answer questions after this talk until there's another class, and then otherwise I'll be here for another hour if you just want to hang out. Also, you can feel free to message me on LinkedIn, so just find me on LinkedIn, and add me. And yeah, if you have any questions for me, just feel free to reach out. So I'm going to talk about planning and managing your first game project, because I thought that'd be useful for you guys for your game pitches that are coming up. Yeah, it looks like you guys haven't really started the projects yet, which is good, because I think this talk will help for that. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to want to do when you come up with your idea for a game is find your minimum viable product, or like your vertical slice. So the most common thing that causes teams to break down and not finish their project is scoping too high. So you're not going to create like God of War or Mario Kart in your first project. Like my first game jam, I tried to make a pirate game that was kind of like Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And then I realized that you need water physics, and I needed boat controls, and I never really had like a solid gameplay loop in mind. I just thought I wanted to do something with pirates, so I never finished that project in my first game jam. And my second game jam, I worked with a team to make just a simple card combat game that was kind of used the cards to cast spells, and then you would use like a Guitar Hero controller to play notes to like cast a spell. So it's like a bard card combat game. And that was a lot simpler. It just used like 2D art that we got from people in the club. And that was a lot easier to make in a game jam than the original, like trying to make Black Flag idea that I had in my first game jam. Once you have an idea for your like minimum viable product or vertical slice, then you can come up with stretch goals and ways that you want to expand upon your game. Like if you're making Mario Kart, for example, if you wanted to make a game that was like Mario Kart, you don't really need to have bananas and bombs and boosts and a bunch of different car customization mechanics on your first iteration of the game. You really just need a car that'll go around a simple track like in a circle. And once you get that, then you have like the basis of the game down. You can tweak the way that the steering mechanics of the car feel, and then you can come up with additional features that you want to add, like power-ups and boosts and different tracks and stuff like that. You'll also want to identify like what are your personal goals that you want to get out of this project. This is especially important if this is just like a student project and you're going to be doing it on your own free time. Some different personal like goals you might have is maybe you just are doing it for the educational value. You just want to try it and learn some stuff. Maybe you actually want to make a game that you're going to sell, or maybe you're just doing it for fun and you don't really care how it turns out. But you're going to want to find a team that is aligned on these same goals. So if someone is looking to like actually sell the game and put it up on Steam and try to actually make some money off of it, then they're not going to have their same goals aligned with the people that are just wanting to learn things, or people who are just doing it for fun. Doesn't mean you can't work with those same people, but just make sure that everybody knows like what each other's goals are, and so that you can work with those people. If you don't have the same goals personally or goals for the project, and you're not aligned on the vision of the project, that's another thing that causes teams to usually break down. Yeah, so preparation. Once you have your idea, you're going to want to prepare like what the development process is going to look like. The most important thing is to not do too many things at the same time. If you try to like create like a grand vision, like I was talking about earlier, then you're going to realize as you start the project that you don't seem to be making any progress towards those goals. So you're going to want to create a timeline with achievable goals for each milestone so that you feel like you're making progress. If you don't feel like you're making progress, then that's going to just not be motivating to you, and people are going to lose interest. And having just like more achievable goals in different stages. It's just going to be less intimidating. You'll be more confident when you reach your goals, and it's a lot better to surpass what your original plans were than to fall short. You're also going to want to identify your team's strengths and weaknesses. So if you have a team that is mostly all programmers and you don't have any artists, how are you going to create the art? Like, are you going to, if your game needs art, are you going to maybe get some assets off of the Unity asset store? There's a lot of free assets that you could use. Could you maybe, if you had a budget, you could outsource the art to other people externally. Here, maybe you can go and you can find some people from the actual art department and see if they're interested in working on your game with you. If you're a team of all artists and you don't have any programmers, then maybe you can simplify your design down so that you don't have to do as much coding. Maybe you can prototype things in like a pen and paper way, or just create a little board game to try and test out different systems, so that you don't have to implement everything in the engine in order to test it out. Yeah, and this is one of my favorite gifts ever, because this guy's just trying to do way too much stuff at the same time. And this happens a lot in AAA development, for sure. Okay, so project management. So you're going to want to, once you have an idea of your project, you have the overall timeline and some broad goals in mind. You're going to want to identify the different tasks and the dependencies for those tasks. So identify your goals, and then all the components that will be needed to achieve those goals. If you have large components, then break those larger tasks down, which we'll usually call epics, into smaller tasks. Ideally, things that are small enough that multiple people could work on different things simultaneously towards the same goal. And then you're also going to want to try and identify the time complexity, or the complexities and the time estimates for each task. This is really difficult to estimate the time for something if you've never done it before. It's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is basically you don't know what you don't know. So in that case, sometimes it can be useful to do what we call t-shirt size tasks, and just make them, just make general estimates for how long you think something is going to take. If you think something's an extra large, difficult task, maybe that's something that takes months, which is probably then something that you would want to scope down for this type of project, because you're not going to have months just to complete one task. A large task might be a month, a medium task might be a few weeks, and small tasks might be some days, and an extra small task might just be a few hours. And then you're going to want to leave a buffer zone for interruptions and unknowns. This could be good practice even just in a professional environment, because we have a lot of things in our lives that interfere with plans. As a student, that could be classes, exams, or your job or other personal responsibilities. But even as a professional game developer, this could be just meetings, sick time, other personal responsibilities. So it's always good just to leave a buffer zone. I usually recommend doubling the amount of time you think something's going to take. And then maybe eventually you just multiply it by 50%. But for this type of project, if it's your first project, just double the amount of time that you think something's going to take. And then if you get it done ahead of that time, or in early, then that's good. But that will account for any interruptions you might have. Also identify bottlenecks that are going to hold up work for other team members. So for example, you can't really start laying out a platformer level until you have the basic movement and jump mechanics for the platformer working. If you decide that you want to increase the length of or the height of a jump, or add a double jump mechanic later, then all of your levels that you may have laid out before might become obsolete now. And one example I can think of, we actually had to cut a level from a Call of Duty game that I was working on that was going to be a night sniping level, because we couldn't, the visual effects team couldn't get the night vision scope for this specific weapon we were supposed to be using finished in time, so we actually had to cut the entire level or change up the lighting because there was no way that we were going to be able to lay out the level if we couldn't see what it was going to actually look like until the weapon was done. And then just make sure that everyone is aware of your goals and each other's progress. You don't want multiple people accidentally working on the same thing, or people might want to know when someone else is going to finish their work so that they can start on some task that might be dependent on that person's work. Cool. Iteration, yeah. So iteration is just a natural part of the game development process. You're going to go through multiple different iterations of different systems. I'll talk about it more in a little bit, but after each milestone, you're going to want to make sure that you set aside dedicated time to like talk with your team about what went well in your last milestone or sprint, and then what could be improved on what you did like in the last sprint. This is just important for team morale to make sure that everybody's heard. So like maybe one person working on a certain system has some concerns that you hadn't heard about before. This can, or based on the previous progress of the last sprint, maybe that person has some concerns. So this can give them like an opportunity to discuss that. And then you're going to want to take, if you want to take a stab at complicated problems, that's good. It's especially as part of the learning process, you should try to do everything yourself, and you're probably going to want to try and do everything yourself at first. But if you spend 2 weeks on something and you don't make any progress towards that, you're going to get frustrated. So it's best to just spend a couple hours trying to come up with a solution. If something doesn't come to you in a couple hours, then you can try to look at external sources, like look up tutorials or ask other people in this club for help or advice. And then if something just seems like it's going to be just too complicated for the time frame that you have, then be open to changing your design or simplifying it down to something that is still in the spirit of your original idea, but maybe won't be as complex and be a little easier to implement. And then after each milestone, just make sure that you take time to play test your game and find the fun and find what's working or not working. This is just a natural part of the game dev process, and a lot of things are going to go or are going to have to be maybe completely redone from scratch or changed up drastically. The crafting mechanic in The Last of Us, for example, went through, I think it was like a dozen different iterations, and some of them were completely different from the crafting system that ended up in the game. And there's no real way to always know what's going to work or not until you've actually played with it, which brings me to this. There we go. So sometimes you're just going to have to start from scratch. Like this cheeky cockatoo is going to pull everything down. And it's not going to, you're going to have to start over from the beginning because some things just don't work out. Like maybe you wanted to implement a complicated ammo scavenging system in a survival game because you wanted the player to have to conserve their ammo and be very careful with their shots. But maybe after you play it, you find that having to like search every nook and cranny for ammo or being super careful with your shots is just not as fun as you originally thought. And then maybe if you put a lot of work into implementing this ammo scavenging system, maybe you don't want to cut it because you put so much work into it. But sometimes, for the sake of the game, it can be just the better call to either just scrap the system completely or change it up and make it a little bit more simple. Like maybe you make the ammo scavenging give you a little more ammo and it's not as limiting. Or maybe simplify it a little bit so you don't have, maybe you, instead of having to scavenge for multiple different ammo types, you just have one ammo type. So you still have to look for ammo, but it's just not as complicated. Whether if it gets completely scrapped or not, everything is a learning experience and it's all part of the game development process. So just keep that in mind when you find yourself kind of deep into it and you're place testing something and it's just not working out. And then, okay, coding. So actually, I'm interested, who in here is like a computer science major or a programmer? Okay, that's like everybody. So if there are any artists in there, then we value you greatly. But this slide's about coding. This could go against everything that you've probably learned in your programming classes up to this point. But spaghetti code when we're making a game is okay, at least at the start. You're not building a rocket ship, so it's important to remember that. If you're building like the Mars rover and a simple calculation is off by even a fraction, like a multi-billion-dollar, multi-year project could explode. But we're just making games for fun, so that's not, you don't have to be too concerned about how your code looks in this case. So a good practice making a game would be to develop a simple prototype first of something. It could be a messy implementation, but just get it in and see how it feels in the game before you spend too much time developing a really complicated system. Because then if you do end up scrapping that system, then you're going to have wasted a lot of time. This also applies to designers as well. If you were going to, if you say you want to have a skill tree, if before you try to design the entire branching skill tree and all the different skills that a player can unlock, try just designing a few different skills and implement those and see how that works. You may find out the progression of your game changes throughout the development process as you're like playtesting the game. Maybe you don't end up with a skill tree at all. Maybe you just naturally unlock these skills, or maybe like your player just naturally levels up certain stats. So just make sure that try to get a prototype done first before you go in too deep. And then once you have something that you know is going to work, or that's going to be like a fun feature for the game, and that you're committed to making it work, then you can rewrite your system and make it more extensible or reusable. And then it could be like extended upon. You can add more things to it or reuse it in future projects. And you want to create a system eventually that is more or that is flexible. So, for example, don't hard code like the enemy's health to 100. Maybe you want to change that at some point. Make it extensible so you can add on new features to the system. Like if you're creating a loot system, try to set that up so that you can add different loot types easily. Like a designer could do that, maybe without any programming help. And then you're going to want to make it maintainable. So write your code in a modular way that isn't going to break when you update like some other system. Make it not tied to other systems super heavily. And then make it readable, so if someone else has to change something in your code, it's pretty clear how it works. You can document things. In a smaller project, you probably won't have documentation, but you can add comments to your code, make sure that the variable names are clear, that you have functions that are doing like only one specific thing. Just make it more maintainable. And then lastly, now you've been working on the game for a while and you're finally ready to start finalizing the game. So you're going to want to create an alpha and a beta build. An alpha, it would be like a portion of the game. This could maybe be your fully implemented vertical slice. This is usually what you might have at the end of a game jam project, I'd say. Like you would probably have an alpha version of a game that is fully playable, but maybe it might have some bugs in it, or maybe the design might change in the future, or there might be some features that you're missing that you may have wanted to add. And then a beta version of your game would be a feature-complete version that you're happy with, that you feel has representing all of the features that you wanted to add, but it may just require a bit of bug fixing or some additional content, like maybe you want to create some more levels, but they're not adding any new different movement mechanics or something like that. And then, so if you create those, try to create a copy in a different branch, and then get some people to play your game. Everybody in this club could play your game, and you can ask for feedback there. And then that might influence some of the decisions that you're having on some of the gameplay. allow some time for only bug fixing towards the end of your project. This is like in a game jam, you're usually working on features up until the very last second, so that's why you end up usually in like an alpha stage. If you were trying to make a game that you want to release to the public, you're going to want to make sure that at some point you're going to want to create a copy of your project in its current state, branch it, and then start working on only bugs in that branch, and don't add any new features or additional content that could potentially break the game. It depends on the length of time that your project will be going for. If it's just a few months project, maybe your bug fixing stage will only last up like the last week of development. If it's a like 3-year game, you would want to start bug fixing and only bug fixing like 3 months ahead of when the actual game comes out. Unfortunately, this doesn't actually always happen in AAA development. And then, save unfinished content, things that you're just not going to have time for future updates or a DLC or a sequel. If you had a game and you want to, and you add content in the future, that can just help advertise your game and raise user engagement, because they'll see that they'll keep coming back, noticing that, oh, this game has new content and new things. And then finally, the most important thing is to have, I don't really like this term, but you have a post-mortem discussion on your whole project and what went well and what you can improve on, and that'll help you for your next game when you, whenever you decide to make, maybe it could be an extension of that game or a completely different game, but it's important for just overall team's morale and as a learning process to make sure that everybody is able to discuss how the project went from their experience. I think that's everything. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle, for speaking.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for Kyle about
Anything? This is an old slide format that we used to have from the club back in 2016 too.
What would you say is like your favorite like, game pitch project?
Oh, favorite game pitch project? Let's see. There was one that involved a skateboarding penguin, and that turned out pretty well. Somebody made an entire like almost Tony Hawk like game in the 3 months that we had. I think we had quarters back then, so we had a lot less time. The semester system works a lot better for game pitches, but somebody made like an entire like little skating simulator with a penguin on a skateboard in 3 months, and I thought that was pretty fun. Yeah.
Could you explain to me like how your workflow is in your position? Like what do you do on a daily basis?
Yeah. So let's see. Just like from a general like abnormal day, we'll have a stand-up in the morning. I think that stand-ups are important for everybody to know what everybody else is working on and have awareness on that. For larger teams, that becomes a little bit more complicated. Like if you had like 30 people and everybody's giving an update, then kind of people stop paying attention. But for smaller teams where it's like 5 or 6 people, it can be really beneficial to just sync up every day and just talk about what's going on. After that, I generally I'll have a little bit of time to work on some stuff. I might do some code reviews in between meetings and look at other people's code and give feedback on it. I think that's also important for you guys if you're working on a team, is to just review each other's code so that you can, one, find bugs, and two, just so that everybody knows kind of what's going into the game and there's more than one person that knows how something works. For game jams, that can be a little more difficult. People don't always review the code that's going in game jams because you don't really have time. But on a project like this, I think that could be useful. Then I'll have I'd say I'm in a senior level, so I only spend about half my day actually implementing things. We're working from home now too, so there's a lot of calls I'll have with other people, and sometimes we'll discuss like an implementation plan for something. And then what I'm doing changes throughout the year too. Like towards the beginning of the year, we're usually prototyping new systems that may or may not make it into the game. Maybe doing some documentation on different systems or features that we either already created or that we want to create in the future. And then towards the middle of the year, that's when we start to kind of lock down the game and make start shifting into only like feature development mode instead of just like prototyping and coming up with new ideas. And then towards the last like third of the year, it's usually just bug fixing. And maybe like after we release the game, there's some post-launch content work in there as well.
Can we see
Oh,
these?
sorry.
One of the games you worked on?
Yeah, let's see if I have my old, might need to help Lawrence. See if I have my old website. This is going to be a little embarrassing because I haven't updated this in years. But let's see, yeah, so this was a game that I made that was kind of based on Legend of Korra. And we implemented different, like the arena that they use in that show. And we had different, this is a VR game. So different motion control. This is like the air bending. So you could like swish yourself by moving your hands.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Let me fix that up.
The Discord screen sharing can sometimes be
Yeah.
touchy. Okay, yeah. So this was based on like Legend of Korra. We made the arena that they use in that show, and it was a VR game. So you use like these hand motions to. This was the air bending. You could like swish yourself from left to right. This was a game jam project at Beach Hacks, and then like you could pick up these discs. This is like the earth bending. Move it around. You can like control where it goes after you throw it. I think it was like a 24-hour game jam, so it may not look great, but I was pretty happy with how all the mechanics turned out. Yeah, like move the discs around, like fireballs. The fireballs are pretty basic. It's like the water bending. Another thing I made for the game dev class here was, oh, there's sound, okay, that's pretty loud, was this space sim that was supposed to be kind of like, we used, what's that thing called? It's not, Elite Dangerous. We used Elite Dangerous and FTL kind of as inspiration for this project. And yeah, you had like a little spaceship you can fly around. It had real physics and everything. We had different weapons. So that was like a laser beam. You also have like a Gatling gun and, and a missile. And yeah, you have like your little in-world console there on the right that shows your health and your missiles and everything. And then that little gyroscope in the middle was actually interesting because we, this is a VR game and I had a friend that used to get like really VR sick. So we added this kind of gyroscope thing in the middle so you can it's kind of like a mini map, you can see where everything is, but it also stays, it keeps its same orientation while the ship is moving around. So after we added that kind of like point of reference, he didn't get sick anymore because he was able to like look at that to orient himself. So this project was really fun. I did this for the game dev class here. And then I also worked on this sort of, I guess I did a lot of VR projects. Asymmetric combat game for my senior project. There was like one player that was in a VR headset that had a bunch of different weapons. As an alien, you could like pick things, pick people up, or you could you had like a shield and a laser gun, but different weapons. And then there was like 4 people on the ground that were just playing on PC, and they had things like just regular guns and grapple hooks. It was kind of like Attack on Titan, and you could move around the alien and try to eventually whittle down his health. And then I made like a augmented reality world builder for like D&D. This is kind of fun. And you would like create it in a PC, and then you could like, put it on your phone, and it would show up on a table or something. Yeah, there's a lot of VR projects. There's a VR lab here still, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys have they expanded how many headsets and stuff?
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
have 10 Quests now, or 10 of the Oculus Quests, or the Meta Quests, and then we also have a 5 Pro.
Cool. So yeah, if you guys had an idea for like a VR project or an AR project, I think less highly of VR now. I don't think it's like as viable. I still think it was really expanding when I was like in the club, but now it's kind of hit a plateau again, where there's still like the limits of the technology and the availability of it. But I think that it's really a fun thing to work on, because there's a lot of like technical challenges and things you want to learn, and it looks pretty cool. So if you guys had an idea for like a VR project, you might be able to use some of the equipment that's in the VR lab here.
Anyone have any other questions?
Anything else? You guys have any questions about what the club was like 5 or 6 years ago?
What was the book like 5%?
Wasn't too much different from this. We were, when I first was the president, it was pretty small. I'm very happy to see that there's a ton of people here still. Yeah, we expanded pretty rapidly. That was the first year that we did when I was president, it was the first year that we did SGDA conference, which I have this shirt from. I'm not sure how much you guys know about that, but that was kind of like our overarching organization that we tried to create, so that to ally all of the different game dev clubs in Southern California. And that was like the first year that we all just wanted to meet up and make games together. So we actually had an in-person conference. That the first one happened here at Cal Poly. They had it in like the business building, and we actually got people from Obsidian and Blizzard and a bunch of different game companies to actually come physically and talk to people. And people came and they showed off their projects, and that was really cool. And now in this like post-pandemic virtual, where everything's virtual, I don't know how we got people to actually come physically to a location to do stuff. But now, like, we still do that every year. So I think there's going to be another one this year, right? But it's just a virtual conference.
They usually host a virtual conference, I think, during the summer. I think last year we weren't like super aware of it, but I think this year they're still trying to set stuff up around May.
Cool. Yeah, and that's usually pretty fun still. So they get people from different studios to talk on different subjects, and it can be, I think it's a really great time to like hear people, like actual professionals, talk about stuff and get their experiences and ask them questions. And people still show off some of their game projects too, which is really fun.
What was your route going from, like, I guess, like from a college graduate going to like what your position?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay. So it was really difficult for me to find a job after college. I spent about a year looking for a job. I was a little limited because I didn't want to move like out of state somewhere. So I just kind of applied for jobs locally. But it was really difficult for me to get a job. I went to a lot of different interviews. One interview, like some of them went really bad, some of them went really good, and then like one of them went really good, and I found out that the company didn't actually have any money to hire me. And then I had to wait another like 6 months to find a job. During that time, I worked on like small, kind of not necessarily my own projects, but with indie developers, worked on small like augmented reality games, and did a little like contract work for like virtual reality training and stuff like that. And eventually I got just really lucky and got a job at Infinity Ward, which makes which is the company that made Modern Warfare. That interview was 8 hours long. So I had it was like 4 hours of coding and then like a couple hours of design questions and then a lunch and then yeah, it was pretty long. But somehow I got that job. I feel like all of the interviewing experience that I got over that year helped. And then yeah, and now I've moved to High Moon Studios since then. But that's still a studio that works on Call of Duty, so it was just a shift within Activision. And I was an intern at Blizzard before I graduated, but even after that, it took me about a year to find a job. So I guess my advice for people would be to just try and get, if you're like a sophomore, try to start looking at applying for as many internships as like that are interesting to you. It'll all be useful experience. Yeah, the more internships you get, the more likely you'll be able to impress people on a resume. Sometimes getting past that initial like recruiter screening can be really difficult. Even if you might be really talented, but you just don't have any experience, so then you never make it to the interview stage, so you can never impress people on an interview. So it's good to like do personal projects that you can show off on like your website, or try and get an internship. Do as much stuff as you can before you graduate, and it'll just help your chances. And then some people might still have a really difficult time finding a job after college. And then my advice to you is just like, if you really want to make games, then just stick with it and just keep trying, keep making games, and like never give up, and eventually you will find something. Also, I strongly believe that all of the work experience that you gain from like making games or doing projects in this club can be applied to pretty much anything in not just software engineering, but pretty much any field. So if you just want to use this as a platform to learn, then I think that is this is like one of the best ways to do that. One of the reasons that I joined this club originally was because I was looking for projects to do with people, just hands-on. I just wanted to do something, and I liked games, and none of the other clubs seemed like they were doing projects that really interested me or would allow me to do things that were completely outside my comfort zone. This club gave me an opportunity to work with like a bunch of people in a team working towards something that we all had thought was fun, and we were all like getting some enjoyment out of it, and also like learning stuff at the same time. So even if you're not interested in a game dev job at all, I think this is super valuable experience for you. Yeah, I actually didn't know that I wanted to go into game development when I first started this club, and then I guess by the end of it, I was pretty confident that was what I wanted to do. But you don't have to be interested in a career in game development to make games.
Other questions, Lopez?
8.
You play Call of Duty in your free time?
I play a lot of Call of Duty. It was like my favorite game. Actually, that's not true. It was. I had a lot. I like RPGs and strategy games. But Call of Duty was like the first game that I got on console. I remember in junior high, it was really popular, and all of the like jock type people were playing it. It was like, yeah, you can play Call of Duty tonight, bro. And I wasn't really interested in that because I was a nerd. But then I tried it out and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And Call of Duty became like one of my favorite like game franchises. So I think it's important to play the games that you make. You're definitely going to get a lot more insight into like the design of the game if you actually play the game. That's not always true in AAA game development, that people play the games that they make. But I definitely played it a lot. I've been pretty busy lately, so I try to separate myself from like work. And when I'm playing the game, I try not to think about work too much. Sometimes the game makes me think about work if I'm playing it. Like over the Christmas break, I didn't play any Call of Duty because I didn't want to think about work. So I played things like Horizon, but playing other games is also super important to experience that. So you can maybe take aspects of those games and say, oh, this worked really well. I'd like to try that, but maybe with a twist. If you're really into game development and design, when you play your games, you're going to probably think about I would like to make this specific thing better. That was actually a common interview question that I like to ask people, and that I got asked on my interviews was what's your favorite game, and then what do you not like about that game? If you play the game a lot, usually you'll have something that you would like to improve about the game. But yeah, I play a lot of Call of Duty and a lot of other different games too.
Any other quick questions before we close off the meeting?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to like the senior level?
It took me about. I started in 2018, so it took me about 4 or 5 years to get a senior level. I think that's a little bit faster than normal. Maybe not. But if you're interested in making it to that level, then I think don't rush it too much when you get your first job. But I think the best advice that I got was when you get your first job, ask a lot of questions. It's a lot. Nobody is ever going to blame you for asking a lot of questions. What they won't like is if you don't ask a lot of questions and then some like project falls behind or something. If you ask a lot of questions, it's going to be more beneficial for you. In the long run, you're going to learn more, and then as you learn more, eventually you'll start just naturally. People will start coming to you for advice on things, and then eventually you just kind of naturally get into a position where you're just giving more people advice than just doing stuff on your own. I think at an associate level, you're kind of doing stuff with a lot of guidance. At a mid-level, you're just kind of doing a lot of tasks without much oversight. And then in the senior or lead levels, you start to be more like overseeing other people or just helping them out and giving them advice. And all that just comes naturally. If you're just a sponge for wanting to learn stuff, then it'll all just come naturally. It looks like we're out of time.
Yeah.
But if anybody has any other questions for me, I'm just going to be outside. You can just hang out I'll be here for an hour. And you can also just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to give any of you guys advice on resumes, job things, just game development in general. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.